search.
I think that we all know that Google is the king of advertising, both getting ads but also rating ads. How can you, a little company, Jeff, take Google on? Because that's what you're really doing.
Yeah, so we are taking on Google. I wouldn't call them the king. I think that's still, I think the throne is still up for grabs.
This is Jeff Green. He is the founder and CEO of The Trade Desk, the company that is taking on Google. Green is a disruptor and thought leader changing the landscape of digital marketing. But let's go back to the beginning. How did a little company like The Trade Desk even get to the point of being mentioned in the same sentence as the likes of tech giant Google? Green is a serial entrepreneur. He founded AdECN in 2003 at the age of 26, which served as the first generation of programmatic digital advertising and was the first ever demand-side advertising exchange service. This new innovation was recognized by the major tech players very quickly. In 2007, the company was bought by Microsoft for $70 million, who retained Green as the head of the business unit. Green stayed with Microsoft for 2 years before launching the second generation of programmatic advertising technology through the company we now know as The Trade Desk. So let's break down programmatic advertising, and who better to do it than the founder himself.
As a marketer, you have to be very deliberate and data-driven. So programmatic is just a fancy word to explain the difference between data-driven and guessing. We used to do guessing for most of advertising, and today we're being data-driven. Now, what I mean by data-driven is that in every ad that shows up, there's actually an auction that is being run. It almost always is literally an auction, where an ad request gets sent to an ad server, the ad server then sends that out to a bunch of buyers, and then you look in real time, and by real time, I mean in 1/10 of 1 second, you look at all the potential demand that could buy this particular impression. You pick the one typically that is paying the most. That auction happens 12 million times every single second across the entire open internet.
So, I know what you're thinking. I thought Google was already doing this. But no, the vast majority of their advertisements are purchased through direct insertion orders, which are specific ad campaigns where publishers do not know the exact impact of their ad and do not have control in real time. Programmatic advertising is also better for the customer, who in a recent survey by Salesforce were shown to prefer tailored ad experiences from brands they enjoyed 88% of the time. The Trade Desk is also beating Google in allowing marketers to leverage their own first-party data. Imagine you are a 50-year-old company with mountains of data on current customers, buying habits, and purchase frequency, which you have diligently collected and stored over many years. You go to Google or another major ad tech company and ask to integrate this data in their consumer targeting, and you are told you cannot do so as they will manage the customer targeting. This is what was and is happening in many cases, which does not best serve the company or consumer. The Trade Desk launched Solimar in 2021, a solution platform to this issue, which enables marketers to unleash the power of their first-party data to drive greater precision in their digital marketing campaigns. A simple idea, but one that is revolutionizing the ad tech industry. Now let's talk about the next major movement in the digital marketing world, the termination of Google browser cookies and the rise of UID2. So first of all, what is a cookie and how did we get here? So a cookie is simply a technology for remembering something about you. Without cookies, a website is basically a goldfish that forgets who you are every time you click a new page. Initially, cookies were simply used to remember your web preferences. For an example, if you preferred to see a website in English or Chinese, a web cookie would be used to remember this for next time you visited the website. But in the early 2000s, Google recognized the opportunity to use cookies for advertising and launched Google AdSense in 2003, which shifted the landscape of internet marketing to this day. Now, nearly every website you visit drops cookies in your browser that track your every click, view, and scroll in order to track your interests and target you with ads. Cookies have become increasingly criticized as they regularly violate user privacy. Let's watch this short representation of how this would look in the real world.
Chrome lets web trackers follow you around in a way that might freak you out in the real world. Imagine you're just out browsing, minding your own business. But from the very first place you visit, you get joined by one of these. A cookie. He belongs to an advertising network or data tracker. In other words, he's a spy. What's pesky about cookies is they stick with you, allowing nosy companies to tag along to all the other places you browse. Tracker cookies come from lots of companies you've probably never heard of. But the #1 cookie baker is Google, the same company that makes the #1 web browser, Chrome.
Could I get a drip coffee?
Drip coffee?
Google makes most of its money by targeting ads. So no wonder Google doesn't do much to stop the surveillance. But it doesn't have to be this way.
And let me show you why. Let's bring Jeff Green back in to explain what UID2 is and how it is much better than Google cookies.
So let me explain what the solution is. There's really 4 parts. The first thing is a unified ID. This ID is simply a random number that is an upgrade to the random number that was inside of cookies. And it's an upgrade because it's encrypted, it's an upgrade because it rotates, and it's an upgrade because anybody who uses it has to accept terms and conditions, which is not true in a browser or inside of cookies. The second thing is that there's the lightest weight single sign-on on the internet. And what this does is it makes it really easy for a consumer to consent one time per website and per app, saying, yes, I'm willing to receive relevant ads in exchange for this free content. You verify that with an email address, and now that becomes true across all of your devices. The third thing is there is this consumer consent framework. And that means that they can specify in one place something that gets inherited on your Apple phone, but also in Chrome. And right now, Chrome and Apple's operating system don't talk to each other at all. So this is a mechanism that it makes it possible for those OEMs to consume that. And then lastly, there is this publisher consent framework. So that when you say, I'm willing to see relevant ads from this particular publisher, you don't have to say it again and again and again, okay, every time you go to the website. And in fact, you only have to verify your email address one time. Because without this, you may see an internet where every single website requires you to sign in, and then you get a lot more spam, as well as you see sharing and different privacy policies that, of course, as consumers, we're never going to read. So across those 4 things, we upgrade cookies across the board, and everybody is better off for it.
These monumental shifts in the ad tech industry, combined with mounting legal developments, are starting to show cracks in Google's seemingly impenetrable armor. In 2022, Google amassed $283 billion of revenue, of which $224 billion, or nearly 80%, came from advertising. But as Google is pushed away from browser cookies due to the mounting social and tech peer pressure, will Google be able to retain their vice grip on the industry? Recently, Google has pivoted by developing their privacy sandbox, which allows Google to group users through trust tokens for advertising without linking their identities across websites. The problem is, will this be as effective? With lawsuits regarding antitrust against the U.S. Justice Department and a multitude of lawsuits from current and former advertisers, Google for once seems to be the one fighting uphill. Green was asked about this in a recent CNBC interview. Let's hear his take.
And there was also a big lawsuit just filed by Gannett alleging that Google has anti-competitive practices. Google is your main competitor.
That's right.
What does this regulatory crackdown and this lawsuit from Gannett mean for you?
Yeah, so of course there's always lots of people looking at privacy and making certain that everybody's doing the right thing. We're very excited about the opportunity that creates for us to do the right thing for advertisers, brands, and for publishers. But then separate from privacy concerns, which have often been something that Google's under a lot of scrutiny for and has lost lawsuits over, there are also antitrust lawsuits from the European Commission, from the Department of Justice, from the Texas Attorney General, and then yesterday, a lawsuit filed by Gannett. And I think this is really significant. While they don't necessarily have the same leverage against Google the Department of Justice or the European Commission has, I do think somebody who's financially dependent on Google filing a lawsuit despite their financial dependence, saying that their practices are not fair, speaks to the government's case against Google, and I think shows a very significant, strong opinion from a publisher saying that the marketplace isn't fair and it needs to be fair.
It does need to be fair, and we need more companies pushing innovation and putting pressure on the heavyweights in our world. I think most of us would agree more freedom and less exploitation of our data is needed now more than ever. So what do you think? Is the ad tech industry moving in the right direction? Away from big tech and zero privacy to an open internet where we can maintain our digital autonomy. Jeff Green and the Trade Desk are continuing to push forward toward a world where consumers have more power over their internet identification. With more and more advertisers moving away from direct insertion orders to programmatic advertising, and with UID2 replacing browser cookies along with Google's mounting legal challenges, this sounds like the start of a David and Goliath story. That's it for today's research video. Comment your thoughts below. If you liked this video, tap the like and subscribe button. If you didn't, tap the dislike button. Either way, thank you kindly.